Hello. On behalf of my co-authors, I'm presenting our paper titled Cohabitant, the design, implementation, and evaluation of a virtual reality application for interfaith learning and empathy. I will start with providing some context to understand why this work on learning and building empathy among different ethno-religious groups are so important. In the past decade, you might have noticed the rise in interfaith conflicts and hostilities. Unfortunately, these conflicts disproportionately affect our society's most marginalized and vulnerable groups. Take, for example, the increasing incidents where women are facing increasing harassment because of their religious attire. These harassment and violences are often rooted in various misconceptions about faith cultures. For example, consider the Sikh community, many of who wear turbans. They faced increasingly more hate crimes following the 9/11 incident. More recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have observed how a lack of understanding about a group can lead to a widespread stigmatization. For instance, the Chinese community faced a lot of online harassment based on myths about their eating habits. These examples highlight the urgent need for intergroup learning and empathy in general across different ethno-religious groups in our particular case of this paper. While competing solutions may not be the ultimate answer to all these different forms of interfaith tensions and violences, our interests are in addressing the types of conflict that arise from intergroup misperceptions, a lack of learning, and negative stereotypes. One solution offered for interfaith learning is facilitating dialogues among them. However, there are some obvious challenges, especially in the West, that make interfaith connections and dialogue difficult in the social setting. First, most of the initiatives for interfaith dialogues have been within macro social settings, such as interfaith conventions or dialogues in institutional levels. These dialogues are barely able to make any changes how people from different faith groups connect in everyday social settings and learn about each other. Furthermore, people often require assurances of safety to discuss religious issues in public spheres, even when the discussion are necessary. Because discussing religious issues in public settings often is discouraged in many societies, as religion is treated something as private. Informed by these findings, we examine how we can use virtual reality to facilitate safer intergroup contact and learning and generate empathy among people. Our choice of VR was inspired by two particular affordances of it. First, the physical affordance, as it allows virtual spatial movement, and second, sensory affordance, as it can facilitate communication through vision and audio. We will explain how we have made use of these two affordances later in this talk. But before I explain the nitty-gritty of our systems implementation, I want to briefly discuss the theoretical foundation that has been guiding us. This theoretical foundation has given us insights into the effectiveness of intergroup contact by illustrating how it can foster learning and empathy between different faith and ethnic groups. This system draws its theoretical basis from the influential work of psychologist Gordon Allport. In his seminal book, The Nature of Prejudice, Allport presented the intergroup contact theory. This theory suggests that prejudice among different ethnic, religious, and racial groups originates from misunderstandings and stereotypes among them. Then it proposes that such prejudices can be reduced through direct interactions and shared learning experiences among these groups. There are three primary ways in which intergroup contact helps reduce prejudice. First, it improves our knowledge of the outgroup, helping us understand them better. Second, it eases the anxiety associated with intergroup communication, making conversations more approachable. And third, it nurtures empathy and perspective taking, allowing us to see things from other groups' point of views. For additional insights into faith culture, interfaith connection, and the role of faith in group coexistence, we drew from two lines of work: religious effect in group coexistence and outcomes and challenges of interfaith connection and learning. And last but not the least, we appreciate the rich human-computer interaction literature on using VR for empathy building, as well as critical reflections of using VR for empathy. Drawing on this literature, we integrated two key design elements into our system: storytelling and role playing. The act of sharing traditions and cultures through storytelling has been effective in reducing stereotypes and improving appreciation for diversity. Additionally, previous research demonstrated that role playing can trigger emotional responses comparable to real life experiences and potentially shape behaviors in the real world. Altogether, the aim of this application is to offer users a chance to experience a typical day of celebration from a religion different from their own. For instance, a Hindu individual could immerse themselves in the observances of Easter, gaining insights into the festival spirits as well as its cultural and ritualistic importance in Christianity. We recognize that asking a friend about Easter in a social setting might be socially awkward and uncomfortable for some people, and this app provides an alternative, immersive learning opportunity for them. With this goal, we created scripts illustrating a typical day of celebration in three different religions: Easter in Christianity, Durga Puja in Hinduism, and Eid in Islam. To generate these scripts, we invited participants from three faith groups to a participatory design workshop and co-designed the storytelling scripts with them. The first component of the VR scene, the stories, highlighted common elements across all three religions: attires, foods, rituals, visiting places, gift giving, and communal gatherings were the shared components in the three stories about three religions. For the second component, the role-playing option, participants could put on new clothes, give gifts to their friends and families, and observe rituals during the celebration days. In each scene, users experience a day in a religious festival, starting with waking up in a virtual bedroom and progressing through activities like showering and dressing up. They're guided by storytelling scripts and simple commands for role-playing. Visual cues, such as blue arrows, direct users to specific locations, while auditory cues like alarm and shower sounds give the virtual environment a feel of reality. Successful completion of tasks, such as interacting with specific items, is verified by the application for activities like eating dates in Islamic scene or offering food in the Hindu and Christian scenes. In all three moments, users receive narration about particular activities, norms, and religiously significant artifacts. Finally, we conducted a user study with 30 participants, 10 from each religious groups. Our user study served two main objectives. First, to statistically evaluate how this interaction influenced interfaith learning and the development of empathy among them. And second, to qualitatively assess the usability of our system while also exploring the broader implication for utilizing VR and similar activities, interactive technologies in fostering interfaith connections, learning, and empathy. This is a snapshot of our user study session. Participants started with a pre-session questionnaire and then made themselves familiar with the VR environment by immersing themselves into the scene of their own religion. Following that, they were immersed into the two scenes from two religions other than their own. Following the immersion, the participants filled up the post-session questionnaires, and the study completed with a qualitative interview. The goal of the statistical analysis was to measure how the empathy changes among participants before and after the immersion into the application. We used three empathy scales: interpersonal reactivity index, scale of ethnocultural empathy, and scale of inclusion of others in the self. To put simply, the first and last scales measure individual level empathy, and the SEE scale measures ethnocultural empathy changes. The results show that the IRI and SEE scores increase significantly after immersion, while the IOS score decreases. In other words, there was an increase in empathy at the individual level, but not at the ethnocultural level. We discussed several reasons why Cohabitant was successful in increasing individual level empathy. These details are available in our paper if you're interested to read more. However, I want to highlight two key points here. First, participants had amplified spatial and social presence through multidirectional movement, object manipulation, and character interaction. Second, studies in psychology demonstrate that sharing happy, intimate, and complex emotional stories improve interpersonal closeness. In our application, participants shared a joyful moments in a day of celebration. Additionally, they listened to narrators recount for their childhood memories and express positive and negative feelings. These are likely the reasons for increased empathy in the individual level. Our study also showed that participants' empathy decreased in the ethnocultural level. And why is that? The decreased ethnocultural empathy may be attributed to a phenomenon known as outgroup hate. It increases both when the in-group is made salient and when the in-group norm tends to be discriminatory. Our participants were immersed into their own scene before experiencing the scene of two other religions. Assuming that lower ethnocultural empathy scores can be interpreted as an instance of outgroup hate, it is possible that the initial experiences of the simulation of their own faith unintentionally emphasized participants' in group identity and resulted in subsequent interactions with other faiths feeling more like outgroup experiences. We also conducted qualitative explorations into participants' experiences with Cohabitant. I will briefly mention three key points here. First, participants perceived the system as a medium that provides a safer environment for learning about other religions through the immersion, primarily because it allowed for the exploration of private religious aspects in a safe and non-judgmental manner. Second, there were concerns about faith sensitivity and ethical issues when interacting with people from other religions. For example, some participants found it inappropriate or sensitive to immerse themselves in scenes like role playing rituals or entering the religious establishments of other faiths. Third, the system facilitated the exchange of cultural practices. Finally, we provide main key lessons alongside our design contributions in this paper. First, our study showed the importance of discussing faith-related cultural, ritualistic, and historical aspects in social settings. Although most of our participants informed feeling uneasy discussing faith in public, many times describing it inappropriate and insensitive, they nevertheless recognized the importance of such discussion in multicultural society. Second, our study revealed design nuances that can affect individual versus group connections in the context of interfaith relationships. And finally, connecting faith groups and initiating dialogues among them is a delicate and sensitive issue. Poor design choices may even lead to non-use of such systems. Similarly, how some of our participants rejected to play roles of rituals in other religions. In our next iteration, we aim to overcome such limitations to address the ethical issues into the design. With this, I want to thank you for watching this presentation. My co-authors and I are happy to take questions over an email.